Life was simple, or at least that's what I believed when I was young. I never worried about money, responsibilities, or the future because I never had to. My father was a successful businessman, and as far as I was concerned, that meant my life would always be comfortable. From the moment I could remember, everything had been handed to me. If I saw something I liked, I asked for it, and it was mine. A new phone? The latest model was in my hands the next day. Designer clothes? My wardrobe was overflowing with them. A luxury car. I had access to the best, even before I was legally allowed to drive. My life was effortless, and I never questioned it. While other kids worried about exams and their future careers, I was busy enjoying life. I didn't study much, and I never worked a single day. School was nothing more than a place I had to attend because society expected it. My teachers often told me I had potential, but I ignored them. My grades were average at best, but I didn't care. What was the point of studying when my father had already built a successful empire? I assumed one day he would pass it down to me, and that would be enough. Mornings were slow and comfortable. I woke up late, stretched in my king-sized bed, and had breakfast brought to me by the house staff. Sometimes I stayed in bed for hours, scrolling through social media, watching TV, or texting my friends about our plans for the day. I didn't have to lift a finger. Everything was done for me. When I did go out, it was always in style. My friends and I drove expensive cars, wore the best clothes, and spent money like it was endless. We never thought twice about dining in five-star restaurants, staying in luxurious hotels, or flying to exotic destinations just for fun. We lived life in the fast lane, never worrying about the cost. People around us looked at us with admiration, or perhaps envy, but I never paid much attention. I was too absorbed in my own world to notice what anyone else thought. At family gatherings, the adults talked about business, investments, and the importance of saving money. My uncles discussed the risks of the market, and my cousins shared their future plans. Some were studying finance, others were working hard to start their own companies. But I wasn't interested. I would sit back, scrolling through my phone, barely listening to their conversations. Why should I care about business or hard work? My father had done it all, and I was convinced I would inherit his success without effort. Even my closest friends warned me. "You should start thinking about the future," they said. "You can't depend on your father's money forever." I laughed. "Why not?" I replied. "Life is good. Nothing will change." I didn't realize how wrong I was. I didn't know that the world wasn't as predictable as I thought, and I had no idea that everything I had taken for granted was about to disappear. One evening, just as I was about to leave the house to meet my friends, my father called my name. His voice was calm but firm. There was something different about it, something that made me stop. "Come to my study," he said. I hesitated for a moment. My father was always kind, always generous. He had never been the type to lecture me, never the type to say no. I assumed this would be another casual conversation, maybe even a reminder to be careful while driving. I walked into his study, a place I rarely entered. The large wooden desk was spotless, and the walls were lined with books about business, history, and economics, subjects I had never paid much attention to. My father sat in his leather chair, his hands clasped together. His expression was serious. "Sit down," he said. I sighed and took a seat across from him. "Father, I have plans tonight. Can this wait?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied me for a moment, as if seeing me for the first time. Then he took a deep breath and said something I never expected. "Son, we need to talk about your future." I smiled, relieved. "My future? Father, I don't need to worry about that. Everything is fine. You've built an amazing life for us. I have everything I need." But my father didn't smile. His eyes were steady, thoughtful. He leaned forward slightly. "And what happens when I'm gone?" His words sent a strange chill through me. Gone? What was he talking about? My father was strong, healthy, always in control. I had never once considered the idea that he wouldn't always be there. "Come on, Father," I said, forcing a laugh. "Why are we talking about this? Nothing is going to change." He shook his head. "That's what you think. But life is not always easy. You have lived in comfort because I work hard. But what have you done for yourself?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm young. I have time." "Time is not an excuse," he said. "You act as if this life is guaranteed forever, but money can be lost. Businesses can fail. The world does not care about your comfort, and if you do not learn responsibility now, you will regret it later." I rolled my eyes. This was nonsense. My father had never struggled, at least not from what I had seen. He always had money. He always provided. I had never seen him worried, so why was he trying to make me worried? "Father, I respect you," I said, "but I don't think we need to have this conversation. Nothing will happen. Everything will stay the same." He stared at me for a long time. His face didn't change. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. Instead, he simply nodded and said, "We will see." His tone sent a strange feeling through me, but I brushed it off. I stood up, eager to leave. "Are we done?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair. "For now." I turned and walked out, shaking my head. Why was he acting so dramatic? Life was good. Nothing was going to change. At least that's what I thought. I had no idea that my father's warning was not just a lesson, but a prediction. And soon I would understand exactly what he meant. The next morning I woke up late as usual, stretching lazily in my soft bed. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows, and the cool air from the air conditioner made my room feel like a paradise. I reached for my phone and scrolled through messages from my friends, all planning another expensive day out. Just as I was about to reply, a knock came at my door. Before I could answer, it opened, and my father stood there. He never came to wake me up. This was strange. "Get dressed," he said firmly. "We are going out." I sat up, confused. "Where are we going?" "You'll see. Just hurry." Something about his tone made me hesitate. He wasn't smiling, and there was no warmth in his voice. It wasn't a request. It was an order. I sighed, threw on my most expensive jeans and a designer shirt, sprayed myself with my favorite cologne, and followed him downstairs. The driver wasn't waiting for us. Instead, my father was behind the wheel himself. That was unusual. He barely drove anymore. I got into the passenger seat, still groggy from sleep. "Father, at least tell me where we're going." "You'll understand soon." We drove in silence. At first, the roads were familiar, the smooth highways, the towering buildings, the luxury stores I was used to seeing. But soon, things began to change. The buildings became smaller, older, and worn down. The wide, clean streets turned into narrow, crowded roads. I looked out the window. People moved quickly, their faces serious, their hands full of bags, tools, or baskets. Street vendors stood behind small wooden stalls, calling out to customers. Workers in uniforms walked briskly toward bus stops. I saw a man in old clothes sweeping the sidewalk with slow, tired movements. I had never paid attention to these people before. To me, they had always been part of the background, just another part of the city I never thought about. But today, something felt different. My father finally stopped the car near a small marketplace. The air was filled with the scent of fresh fruit and spices, but also dust and sweat. It wasn't like the shopping malls I was used to. There were no fancy lights, no polished floors, no air conditioning. "Come with me," my father said, stepping out of the car. I followed him, feeling strangely out of place in my expensive clothes and clean shoes. People moved past me, busy and focused. Some carried heavy sacks over their shoulders. Others sat on the ground, selling vegetables from baskets. Their hands were rough, their faces lined with exhaustion. We stopped in front of a small fruit stall. A man stood behind it, arranging apples in a neat pile. His clothes were simple, his skin darkened by years of working under the sun. Despite his tired eyes, he greeted my father with a warm smile. "Good morning, sir," the man said respectfully. My father nodded. "Good morning, Ahmed. How is business today?" "Not bad," Ahmed replied. "Some days are harder than others, but we keep going." I looked at him closely. His hands were worn, his fingers rough from labor. He must have been in his 40s, but he looked older. My father turned to me. "Do you know what time Ahmed wakes up every day?" I shook my head. 4 in the morning, my father said. "While you are asleep in your comfortable bed, he is already working. He sets up his stall before the sun rises, carrying crates of fruit, arranging them perfectly, waiting for customers. He does this every single day with no breaks, no vacations, no luxury." I swallowed, suddenly feeling awkward. I had never woken up before 8. I had never carried anything heavier than my backpack. I had never worried about earning money. "And do you know why he does it?" my father continued. I shook my head again. "For his family," Ahmed answered himself. "I have a wife and 3 children. They depend on me. If I don't work, they don't eat." His words hit me harder than I expected. I looked at Ahmed again. He wasn't complaining. He wasn't asking for pity. He was simply living his reality, one I had never even considered before. For the first time, a small voice inside me whispered, "What if I had to live like this? Could I?" I didn't have an answer. But for the first time in my life, I felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. For the rest of the day, my father said nothing. He simply drove us back home, his face calm but unreadable. But inside me, something had changed. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. The tired faces, the rough hands, the men and women waking up at dawn just to earn enough for a single meal. The image of Ahmed, the fruit seller, stayed in my mind. Every day he worked from sunrise to sunset, not for luxury, not for fun, but just to survive. That night, as I lay in bed, my room didn't feel as comfortable as before. The soft mattress, the expensive sheets, the giant screen on the wall, everything that had once felt normal now seemed excessive. I had always thought my life was easy because that was just the way things were. But now, I finally understood what my father had been trying to tell me. "You have everything because I work hard." Those words echoed in my mind. I had never thought about where the money came from. I had never asked how my father built his success. I had always assumed we were rich and that we would always stay that way. I never once considered that money wasn't permanent. What if something happened to my father? What if the business failed? What would I do then? I didn't have a degree, I had no work experience, and I didn't know how to survive in the real world. For the first time in my life, I felt afraid. I thought about my friends, the ones who had warned me before. They had told me to plan for the future, but I had laughed at them. I had called them worriers and overthinkers. But now I realized they weren't wrong. I turned in my bed, trying to push these thoughts away, but I couldn't. For the first time, I felt something I had never experienced before. Shame. I had lived carelessly, wasting money, ignoring responsibilities, assuming life would always be simple. But the truth was, life was only easy because someone else was making it easy for me. And now, I finally understood. If I didn't change, my easy life wouldn't last forever. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight was softer, the air cooler, and yet something inside me felt different. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about where I would go with my friends or what I would buy today. Instead, I was thinking about my future. I walked downstairs expecting to see my father already busy with work. He was a man of routine, up early, reading the news, checking reports, making phone calls. But today, instead of rushing past him like I usually did, I stopped. He looked up from his newspaper, surprised. "You're awake early," he said. I took a deep breath. "Father, can we talk?" He raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Of course, son. Sit." I hesitated before speaking. I wasn't used to serious conversations with him. But after yesterday, I knew I couldn't ignore reality anymore. "I want to learn about the business," I finally said. "I want to understand what you do and how I can help." For a moment, my father said nothing. He simply studied me, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared. It wasn't the usual smile he gave me when he was indulging my expensive requests. This one was different. It was a smile of approval. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Running a business isn't easy. It requires discipline, patience, and effort." I nodded. "I know, and I want to try." My father leaned back in his chair, nodding thoughtfully. "All right, then. If you truly want to learn, you will start from the bottom. No special treatment." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You will work like any other employee. You will start small, doing tasks you may not like. You will wake up early, report to work on time, and learn everything, step by step." It wasn't what I had expected. In my mind, learning about the business meant sitting in meetings, making big decisions, and feeling important. But now I realized that before I could lead, I had to understand how things worked. "I'm ready," I said. My father smiled again, this time with pride. "Good. You start tomorrow." The next day was the hardest of my life. Instead of waking up late and having breakfast in bed, I was up at dawn. Instead of wearing expensive clothes, I dressed in a simple uniform. Instead of driving around in luxury cars, I sat in an office surrounded by employees who didn't care that I was the boss's son. My first task? Filing paperwork. I spent hours sorting invoices, organizing reports, and learning about the numbers that kept our company running. It was boring. It was tiring. It was nothing like the easy life I was used to. By the end of the day, my back ached and my head hurt. I wanted to quit. I wanted to go back to my old life, to the comfort of luxury and ease. But then, I remembered Ahmed, the fruit seller. I remembered his hands, his tired face, and his dedication. If he could wake up at dawn and work every day for his family, then I had no excuse. So, I pushed forward. Days turned into weeks, and I kept learning. I moved from paperwork to sitting in meetings, listening carefully to how deals were made. I learned how to manage employees, how to handle problems, how to make smart decisions. For the first time, I understood the value of money. I saw how hard my father worked to provide for us. I saw that success wasn't just about wealth, it was about responsibility, discipline, and effort. And most importantly, I saw my future clearly for the first time. I wasn't just the careless boy who spent money without thought anymore. I was someone who wanted to build something, to contribute, to stand on my own. One evening after a long day at work, I sat with my father again. He looked at me with quiet pride. "You have changed, son," he said. I smiled, feeling something I had never felt before. True accomplishment. "Because I finally understand, Father. Life is not always easy. And now, I am ready for it. Life is unpredictable. One moment, you may have everything, and the next, it could all be gone. Wealth is not permanent. It can disappear due to unexpected circumstances, bad decisions, or simply the passage of time. Relying solely on inherited money is a dangerous mistake, as it creates a false sense of security. Hard work, responsibility, and planning are essential for a stable future. Success is not just about having money. It's about knowing how to earn, manage, and sustain it. Those who fail to prepare for the future will struggle when challenges arise. The boy in the story learns this lesson the hard way. He realizes that his luxurious life was not his achievement, but the result of his father's dedication and sacrifice. True success comes from effort, not just inherited wealth. Money given without responsibility can be wasted, but money earned through hard work is valued. When the boy finally takes responsibility and starts learning, he experiences real growth. He understands that wealth alone does not guarantee happiness or security. What truly matters is the ability to create, sustain, and adapt to life's challenges. The story reminds us all, fortune can change, but skills, knowledge, and perseverance will always remain.